And instead of doing the job for the American people, they come out and instead come up with government boondoggles that pay themselves billions and billions of dollars, or their friends billions and billions of dollars, which is our dollars. And they want to make sure that that keeps going over and over and over again. I'll give you a perfect example. Who cares if you've ever followed Russiagate or any of this other stuff about the deep state? Chris Wray, the director of the FBI, and Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general then of the DOJ, were tasked with helping us at Congress, where I ran the Russiagate investigation, to expose Russiagate. We went to them and said, look, you guys didn't do this. Help us expose it. And they both doubled down. You know what they did? They launched an investigation against me, the senior congressional investigator for Russiagate on the House Intelligence Committee, and 6 other staffers. They used grand jury subpoenas to get my personal information, my banking information, my emails, my cell phone information, everything else. I didn't find out till 5 years later when Google called me and said, hey, our 5-year notification has lapsed. We can now tell you the DOJ surveilled you. And we had to turn over documents. So that became that we exploded that into a federal lawsuit that's still ongoing in the DOJ and FBI. But those two guys.
Hold on. What? So Google informed you that you're being surveilled 5 years after the investigation started.
Right.
What I mean, what more did they tell you?
They're not allowed to say anything, but that you can be informed now since it's 5 years later. So as a former national security prosecutor, I know you don't just go to Google. You go to every provider. You go to all the telecoms. You go to the bank. You go to everybody. If you're going to run an investigation, that's what you do. But these two guys who were running the FBI and DOJ sat in a room with the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and lied to our faces. They threatened to investigate us, which was bad enough, right? They actually did it. And then these two guys would get exposed, for Rod Rosenstein specifically, for signing a FISA that was totally bogus. And we've caught Chris Wray lying time and time again as the director of the FBI. Put these guys over here for a second. Gina Haspel, who was the director of the CIA, was London station chief in England when Russiagate kicked off. Under the rule of law in America, if you want the Federal Bureau of Investigation to launch an investigation overseas, you have to get permission from the head intel rep. In England, it's the the station chief. So she allowed Russiagate to occur on British soil, where there was a barroom operation to try to record some nub into spilling the beans on Donald Trump. And they would use that to launch the whole Russiagate offensive. Gina Haspel would later become Trump's CIA director. And then when these guys got out of the administration, do you know where Gina Haspel and Rod Rosenstein work today?
Where?
At Christopher Wray's old law firm as senior named partners, making 7 and 8 figures.
How is this going to get broken up? They seem so deep.
Yeah.
I mean, you just mentioned they're embedded in politics. They're embedded in mainstream media. They're embedded in intelligence agencies. They are former top leadership of the military that's now embedded within the military-industrial complex companies. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's how many people are involved in this?
Thousands.
In the deep state.
Thousands.
How would you even begin to dismantle it?
Well, I think the first Trump administration was the beachhead, right? People were just like, you guys are full of it. And we continued to put out the truth. And years later, people are catching up to a lot of that truth, saying, wait a second, you guys weren't lying back then. People being the American public. That's the weapon we need. And you guys weren't lying about impeachment. They literally made up a piece of a phone call to launch a presidential impeachment and then put me in the middle of it by making up a meeting that never occurred. But it sounded dirty at the time. And then when we finally released the transcript, everybody was like, oh yeah, there was no quid pro quo. Nothing illegal happened here. But the narrative had been out there. Now you have President Trump as a president who was impeached for the first time in however many years. And so they get their narratives, right? They don't necessarily care about the conclusory portion of their mission. They use the mainstream media to say Trump's a Russian asset. He's been impeached. Kash Patel is under DOJ surveillance for whatever investigation when he was never done. I've had more mainstream media hits on me than I can count. But they want the title narrative to carry the day. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation. They don't care about the actual truth. And so once you start stacking these together and you show the American public you were lied to, you based your vote at the polls on information that the government purposely withheld from you so that you would vote a particular way. Once you show enough Americans that, then I think you have the movement that you need behind the leadership that we have in Donald Trump, is my position, to take a wrecking ball to the deep state.
How so?
You go to DC and you remove all these positions, right? And you start enacting measures, not of retribution, but of legal consequence. Y'all acted one way. For instance, the people that signed the 51 Intel letter, right? Permanently suspend their security clearances forever. Every one of those guys lied. Every one of those guys got caught lying. You're talking about 2 former CIA directors, a former NSA director, and a former Secretary of Defense. All intentionally, to this day, continue to lie and won't take back their letter. Okay, you can stop making money from your security clearance. There's a start. Then you go in and you get the Eric Charmels of the world, who've been publicly outed as utilizing intel to inject a political narrative across mainstream America. And you remove these people from government. You have to go in there. And the same thing we're talking about the voting, it's the same thing here. You got to cleanse the scrolls. Government service is a service. We're not making you do it. And if you break the rules and regulations, you're out. So that's a big part of it, right? Then you bring in the new bench, the new team. Then you're going to have to keep fighting the media. And I think we're slowly, over the years, have started to win that fight. Because the more and more, this is one thing I learned when I started Russiagate, my name was outed for the first time, that the media is attacking you, the more you're over the target.
Who is at the head of it?
I don't think there's one person or one group. I think it's people who know they're going to benefit from each other if they sign up for the program, let's call it, right? And so, again, not a Republican or Democrat thing. In the glossary of this book, in alphabetical order, I think there's like 65 people I name by title and name, just to show people how expansive the deep state is. And so there is no like one chain of command they report to. Instead, what I believe they do is they bring in people that they can control. Oh, the Obamas still have heavy sway in that entire operation. And so do people that have been around for 10, 20, 30 years in Washington.
I mean, I think it's already out there for them. I mean, how corrupt it is. I mean, that's why I think that's why podcasts are doing so well right now. And I mean, somebody just came in here in media and said that CNN's viewership is only about 50,000 at any particular point in time during the day. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
It's atrocious. And I'll give you an example from sort of the other end of the spectrum. When Tucker was on Fox, and this is not an attack on the reporting, it's just the way the pendulum has swung away from mainstream media in general. When Tucker was on Fox and he was at the peak of his show's viewership, he was still 1/3 less than Bill O'Reilly when Bill O'Reilly was on Fox in terms of viewership.
Wow.
So it had already started, and it's, again, not because of the reporting. I think it's because other people started to say, I don't want to watch mainstream media anymore, anywhere. And the shows, the podcasts, the radios, the series started becoming more and more and more and more popular.